And now, Splunk's Cybersecurity 60-second charity challenge. Remember the rules. You've got to get through an entire subject in 60 seconds, or you donate to today's charity of choice. Good luck!
All right, so another vulnerability, another zero-day vulnerability. This one was from Microsoft. If you haven't heard, they patched a zero-day in Outlook that allows for privilege escalation, no user interaction, where someone could potentially impersonate the user. So, obviously a concerning vulnerability. There is a patch out. It's being actively exploited, though, this vulnerability. It's CVE 2023-23397. And there are proof of concept exploits floating around as well. So my question to you, Mick and Ryan, is when we see exploits like this come up, what exactly does this mean for the end user? Because I know we've gotten questions, from customers, for instance, about how do we respond? What should we make of this situation? So
I'll pause for 1 second and point out, I believe today our threat research team is releasing some detections for those Splunk customers on ESCU. Otherwise, you can go to their GitHub and find some of the PRs that they've already released. But I believe we have a detection coming out for this very shortly, if not already, thanks to the Splunk's threat research team, our internal team that does a lot of the detection. So I'll stop there. But Mick, as the consistent winner, much to my wallet's sadness, you or me?
I think that you should go first as our distinguished overlord. Audra, what charity are we playing for today?
Oh, so the charity that we have this week is the National Center for Transgender Equality. And so this is an organization that's devoted to ending discrimination and violence against transgender people through education and advocacy. So that is the charity.
Wonderful. Certainly timely with some of the news lately. Awesome. Let me get my info here. I wrote something up. I'm kind of prepared.
Whoa.
Hey,
did you write it or did ChatGPT write it?
Right. That's always the question now.
All right, let's get a timer up there. So the recent CVE was a big deal because no user interaction was actually required to trigger the exploit. Once an infected email arrives in the Outlook inbox, sensitive credential hashes could be contained. As I read about on the Huntress Labs blog site, full credit to them, great work. But let's step back a second. This was an exploit that was released with a patch. So why do you, Mr. or Miss Network Defender, care? Let's go to the exact exploit. Let's go beyond the exact exploit. When you see a major vulnerability like this release, how do you deal with it? Do you have a communication plan set up with your executives, with your bosses, with your employees? How do you deal with patches and vulnerabilities that have to be patched sooner than the traditional Saturday and Sunday? Have you thought about the risk to your org? Do you have a risk assessment of your org? How do you explain to your boss that the patch was out, but we chose to wait until Saturday or Sunday because of a change control board because that was easier? As the saying goes, patch Tuesday leads to exploit Wednesday, or as Shannon Davis would say, WWCP CGPTD. What would ChatGPT do?
It's a lot of letters.
That's a very hard one to get out, and I am overcaffeinated.
Awesome. Nick, are you ready?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's spin it up. All right, so there was a nation-state level exploit that got released into the wild. There was a very short dwell time between the exploits. We captured it and the proof of concept. Basically, what that means is the B team got it. The low-hanging fruit was able to leverage this. So if you didn't patch your systems, you should do it immediately. What does that mean to the end user? Honestly, it doesn't really mean that much to you. If you're already doing the right things, if you're having strong passwords, multi-factor, if you're doing your part of it, it's really on those blue teams and those administrators that Ryan mentioned. Now, the impacts of this, why you should care if you've seen about, country X hacking us or hacking country Y, it's because the long-term trickle-down effects of that is what's going to impact you. Things like your healthcare data being stolen, if you were a government employee, that clearance data getting stolen. It's those level of exploits you should be concerned about. But for a day-to-day, there's not much an end user is going to do other than bug your administrators.
So Mick is yelling at me on the back end because he's like, WTF, I thought we said end user. And to me, I'm thinking of the end user being the network defender. You obviously went to probably the more factually accurate end user being the person who uses a computer.
Oh, yes. Technically correct.
The worst type. Audra, as the arbitrator of truth, justice, who won this round?
Gosh, that was a tough one. Mick, I like that you acknowledged, how it could ultimately impact end users beyond just network administrators, because I do think that that's one of the big questions with cybersecurity is how does this impact me as an individual? Because no one cares about anything more than that, right? So that's a strong incentive to pay attention and to respond quickly if it's something that affects your organization. And Ryan, I appreciated talking about different uh, scenarios that could impede you know, fixing an exploit, patching your systems, right? So if it's an exploit a vulnerability that comes out on a Friday, realistically, are you going to get that patched before Monday? Are we talking, Microsoft Exchange, for instance, that's not an easy fix.
I saw on Twitter you don't deploy on Fridays, so it's just.
Yeah. So, does anyone have an opinion to help me pick?
No,
'Cause
Audra, you have to pick now.
I want
ah,
to hear what does our audience think.
It'll be a
yeah.
couple minutes, but
What do
we'll
people
we'll
think?
wait for those chats to come in, which I'm excited by. I don't know. We talked a lot about how we could frame this because we didn't just want to go into the details, right? And one of it was like, how do nation states exploit this? Um, what are we going to see? And I think that's a question like we saw with Hafnium, last February. Even though the patch came out, to your point, Audra, it's so hard to patch Exchange that it was taking weeks, if not months. And I'm sure we saw CISA had alert like a year later saying
Right.
adversaries were still using it.
And I think didn't the FBI actually go into some systems
They did, yeah.
to fix it without like letting people
Authorization. It
know?
was that bad.
Yeah.
They worked with Microsoft to basically, patch
Like there's
without consent.
Yeah,
work
patch
with.
without consent. That's exactly what happened. Interesting. Well, I think I am just going to pick then, and I am going to choose Mick as the winner, just because I think end user is an interesting
Streak. It's a
perspective. And
streak.
It is a streak. You're doing good. It's there we go.